It's considered to be the earliest high culture of Central America. Everybody's heard about the Aztecs. Everybody's heard about the Maya.
Scientists at the Tokyo University School of Medicine just pulled off the impossible by decoding the DNA of a sacrificial victim from a 1,000-year-old pyramid. For decades, the heat and volcanic ash of central Mexico destroyed every attempt to map the genetics of this lost civilization. It was a total dead end until now.
Scientists have made a groundbreaking discovery, the bones of what look to be a new human-like species. They're thought to be more than 3 million years old, and officials say the find could change the way we think about our ancient relatives.
And get this, the results do not just tell us who these people were, but they also show us exactly where their descendants are living today. The mystery of the most powerful city in ancient Mesoamerica is officially coming to an end. Genetic truth unveiled. Long before the rise of the Aztecs, before the Maya reached their classic peak, and centuries before Europeans set foot in the Americas, there stood a city so vast and so powerful that later cultures would call it Teotihuacan. This translates to the place where the gods were born. Located in the northeastern basin of Mexico, this place emerged around the 2nd century before the Common Era. It did not begin as a modest village, but as a rapidly expanding urban experiment birthed in an era of chaos. It is believed that refugees fleeing volcanic eruptions in the southern basin sought sanctuary in this high-altitude valley, banding together to survive. Over the next several centuries, their settlement would grow into one of the largest cities on Earth, rivaling the capitals of Rome and Chang'an in both scale and complexity. At its height, around the 4th century, the city covered more than 7.7 square miles, 20 square kilometers, with an estimated population ranging from 100,000 to over 200,000 inhabitants. That is an extraordinary number for the ancient world. Its monumental architecture, urban planning, and influence shaped Mesoamerican civilization for more than 1,000 years. Yet, despite its grandeur, Teotihuacan left behind no deciphered written language. Its rulers remain unnamed. Its political system is still debated, and for generations, scholars could only speculate about who these people truly were. Were they a single ethnic group, a confederation of tribes, or an imperial elite ruling over a subjugated populace? All this remained a mystery for centuries until now.
We don't have a writing system, so we don't have a history of, the Maya area. They have lavishly engraved epigraphic records of every ruler, every affair he had. We don't have that at Teotihuacan. The second thing is that we don't actually have a burial of a king.
In a bioarchaeological study led by researchers at the Tokyo University School of Medicine, scientists have begun to uncover the genetic identity of these people using one of the most powerful tools in modern science, ancient DNA analysis. This research represents the first successful reconstruction of complete mitochondrial genomes from individuals buried in the city. A feat long thought nearly impossible. The basin of Mexico is a harsh environment for the preservation of organic history. The fluctuating humidity, the intense heat, and the distinct chemistry of the volcanic soil act as a slow-motion acid, degrading the delicate double helix of DNA over centuries. Previous attempts to sequence genomes from this region often resulted in fragmented, unusable data. They focused on mitochondrial DNA, which is the genetic code passed exclusively from mothers to their children. This specific lineage offers valuable information about maternal ancestry, population origins, and kinship networks that stretch back through time unbroken. The samples analyzed in this study came from specific recently excavated burials chosen to provide a cross-section of city life. Most of the individuals were recovered from the La Ventilla district, a well-excavated apartment compound known to be a neighborhood of artisans and stoneworkers. These were the everyday citizens who lived in the bustling residential blocks. Not all were civilians. One sample came from the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, a sacrificial victim buried beneath the pyramid as an offering to the gods of rain and war. The results revealed the genetic map of the classic period. All individuals belonged to mitochondrial haplogroups A2, B2, or D1. In genetics, a haplogroup is essentially a massive extended family clan, a group of people who share a common ancestor from thousands of years ago. The haplogroups A, B, C, and D, together with X, are the founding lineages of the Americas. They are the genetic signatures of the very first bands of hunter-gatherers who crossed into the Americas during the late Ice Age, either via the Bering Land Bridge from Northeast Asia, via the sea, or some other route. Finding these groups confirms that the Teotihuacanos were descendants of the first peoples of the Americas, with no unexpected foreign origins. Among these, haplogroup A2 was the most prevalent in the samples. But the study went deeper than these broad categories. By analyzing the specific sublineages, the smaller, younger branches on the family tree, the researchers found that the individuals clustered most closely with what geneticists call the Central Mesoamerican population group. This distinction is critical. Genetic studies of indigenous Mexico generally find two major clusters. First, there is the Pan-American cluster, which represents a broad genetic signal found across North and South America. Second, there is the Central Mesoamerican cluster, which is specific to the distinct cultural zone of central Mexico. As the researchers explained, placing the city firmly within the Central Mesoamerican cluster suggests that the core population was deeply local. Despite the city's reputation as a New York of the ancient world, a place that attracted immigrants from far-flung regions, or the people who built the city were not mysterious outsiders or foreign conquerors. They were the organic outgrowth of the region's indigenous history. However, the study also revealed a fascinating nuance. While the general population fit into this local central Mexican box, the diversity of the sublineages was immense. To explain this simply, all the people belonged to the same tree, the core genetics. But the study found that the individuals belonged to many different specific branches or sublineages of that tree. This supports the archaeological view that it was a multi-ethnic city. It implies that while people were from the general region, they migrated to the city from many different specific but generally nearby towns, valleys, and villages, bringing their distinct local genetic branches to mix in the metropolis. But genetics alone tells only half the story, and the secret to their massive success was hidden in the food they grew by the ton. Ghost city design. To understand how these people lived, the researchers turned to stable isotope analysis. This technique operates on the principle that you are what you eat. As the body builds bone and tooth enamel, it absorbs chemical elements from food. Specifically, the researchers looked at carbon and nitrogen isotopes. Measuring these isotopes is more like reading a cumulative receipt of everything a person ate over the last decade of their life. The isotopic evidence revealed a heavy, almost singular reliance on C4 plants. In nature, most plants like wheat, rice, or trees use a photosynthetic process called C3, but distinct tropical grasses, most notably maize or corn, use a process called C4. This different process leaves a heavier fingerprint of carbon-13 in the bones of the people who eat it. The levels found in the skeletons were so high that they suggest a diet overwhelmingly dominated by corn. Maize was not just food, it was their identity, it was their economy. To support a population of over 100,000 people in a semi-arid highland valley required a mastery of hydraulic engineering. They were essentially living in a high-altitude desert that only got rain during specific months of the year. To make this work, they built an incredible network of canals and reservoirs. They managed the water with such precision that they could feed an army of workers every single day. There are still many rumors in the air, but what many can confirm is that without this corn, the city would have collapsed in a single generation. This is a key detail. The entire structure of their society was built around the harvest. They even planned their city layout to align with astronomical events that signaled the time to plant and the time to reap. The Street of the Dead, which is the main road of the city, stretches for miles and points toward the sacred mountains. This was not just for show. It was a giant calendar made of stone. Nobody expected this to happen. But the environment actually started to change as they cut down more trees to fuel the lime kilns for their white-plastered buildings. This led to erosion and made farming even harder. See, it's not that simple, though. They had to keep expanding their reach to find more resources. This turned the city into a trade empire. They traded obsidian, which is volcanic glass, for luxury items like cacao and exotic bird feathers from the jungle. Obsidian was the steel of the ancient world. How they used it for everything from kitchen knives to the blades used in ceremonies. Because they controlled the best obsidian mines in the region, they became the richest city in the Americas. Being rich meant they had to have a way to keep everyone in line. They did not have a traditional king that we can identify, but they clearly had a powerful group of elites. These leaders lived in palaces right in the center of the city, surrounded by massive murals of jaguars and gods. The ordinary people lived further out in the apartment compounds. These apartments were actually very advanced. Each compound had its own kitchen, sleeping areas, and even small shrines for family gods. They were built with thick stone walls and flat roofs, keeping them cool in the day and warm at night. What most people don't realize is that these apartments were often segregated by trade. You would have a block where everyone was a potter, and another where everyone worked with stone. This created a strong sense of community, but also a very rigid social structure. Everyone knew their place and everyone worked for the glory of the city. But even the strongest walls cannot keep out the frustration of a population that feels ignored. The pressure inside these crowded stone blocks was building toward a massive explosion. Heavy starch identity. Everything was going great for centuries until the middle of the 6th century. Around the year 550, the great city entered a period of violent decline. Large-scale fires swept through the ceremonial core. The temples were torched and statues were smashed. Interestingly, the fires were selective. They targeted the elite palaces and administrative centers, suggesting an internal uprising. The common people, perhaps tired of the hierarchy, may have turned against their leaders. The crazy part is that there is no evidence of an outside army invading. There are no signs of a foreign massacre or a siege. It looks like the city literally ate itself from the inside out. This happens when the resources run thin and the people at the top keep living in luxury while everyone else struggles. So, here's the deal. The population began to disperse. The canals silted up and the apartment compounds fell into ruin. But as this study proves, the Teotihuacanos did not vanish. Their city died, but their genes survived. The lineages found in these ancient samples are still present in the indigenous populations of Mexico today. For starters, the Mazahua, the Otomi, and the Nahua are the direct descendants of these pyramid builders. They still walk the highlands of central Mexico. Hands down, this is the most important part of the DNA discovery. It proves that the people did not just disappear into thin air. They just moved and integrated into other cultures. Later civilizations, including the Aztecs, who arrived centuries later, wandered the silent ruins in awe. They believed the gods had gathered there to sacrifice themselves to set the sun and moon in motion. They gave the city its name and wove it into their myths. Now, thanks to the precision of genetic science, we are stripping away the myth to reveal the reality. The birthplace of the gods is finally revealed to be something even more familiar and comprehensible. It was a city of humans. And get this. The Aztecs actually tried to copy the style of Teotihuacan in their own capital of Tenochtitlan. They dug up ancient items from the ruins and kept them as sacred relics. They saw themselves as the heirs to this lost empire. But they never knew that the very people they were conquering and living next to were the actual descendants of the city. It's a classic case of history being right under your nose without you knowing it. Basically, the story of this city is a warning. It shows that even the most advanced and powerful civilization can fall if it loses its connection to the people. They built monuments that lasted 2,000 years, but they could not keep their society together. The DNA tells us who they were, but the ashes tell us what happened when they forgot how to live together. It is a story of massive ambition and a very human ending. The ruins still stand today as a silent reminder of what happens when empires fail. Melting pot culture. When you look at the genetic diversity found in the La Ventilla district, you realize that Teotihuacan was truly ahead of its time. It was a place where someone from a distant valley could move and find a better life. This created a vibrant culture that was always evolving. They had musicians, painters, and architects who were the best in the world. The murals they left behind are still some of the most beautiful art ever found in the Americas. They show people in colorful clothing, strange animals, and scenes of daily life. What most people don't realize is that these murals were not just for the rich. Even the regular apartment compounds had painted walls. They lived in a world of color. But here is the catch. As the city grew, the environmental impact became too much to handle. They needed more and more wood to create the lime plaster that covered everything. To make 1 ton of lime, you have to burn a massive amount of wood at high temperatures. This led to massive deforestation for miles around the city. Without the trees, the water cycle was disrupted. The springs that fed the canals began to dry up. The corn crops, which were 90% of their diet, started to fail. This is a key detail. When the food supply is threatened, people get desperate. The tension between the working class in the apartments and the elites in the palaces must have reached a boiling point. The DNA study shows us that the people were a mix of many groups, which usually helps a city. But in a crisis, those different groups might have started looking out for themselves instead of the city. It is not that simple, though. The revolt was so thorough that they even destroyed the symbols of their own religion. They were angry at the gods and the men who claimed to speak for them. The fire was a way of starting over. They walked away from the stone city and went back to living in smaller, more sustainable villages. They took their genes, their language, and their skills with them. This is why we see Teotihuacan influence in the art of the Maya and other cultures for centuries after the city fell. They were the teachers of the ancient world, even after their own home was gone. The legacy of their brilliance is still felt in every corner of Mexico today. Human city reality. So, here's the deal. We now have proof that the mystery builders of the America's greatest city were local people who created a miracle in the desert. They were master engineers who lived on a diet of corn and blood, and they built a world that almost lasted forever. But in the end, they were just like us. They faced environmental changes, social inequality, and the pressure of a massive population. The DNA analysis has finally put to rest the ghost stories and myths. We know their names were hidden in their blood. The thing is, I wonder if we are making the same mistakes today in our own giant cities. Are we pushing the environment too far? Are we ignoring the people at the bottom while the top stays in luxury? Teotihuacan is a mirror. It shows us our potential to build wonders and our potential to destroy them. The descendants of these people are still here, and they are a living link to a time when gods were born in the middle of a Mexican valley. And that's putting it lightly. The scale of their achievement is still hands down one of the most impressive things in human history. We are finally seeing the faces of the people who stood on top of those pyramids and looked out over a city that ruled the world. It was a city of humans, for humans, and destroyed by humans. And get this. Every time a new study comes out, we find more evidence that they were even more advanced than we thought. They had a system of government that worked for hundreds of years without a single king seizing all the power. That is a feat that even modern countries struggle with. The real mystery isn't who they were, but how they managed to stay so united for so long. The answer is in the DNA, in the corn, and in the ashes of the palaces. But even with the DNA results sitting right there on the lab table, some people still aren't convinced that humans did this all on their own. See, Teotihuacan is built with a level of precision that makes modern engineers scratch their heads, and the entire city is laid out on a grid that is a perfect 61.5, 15.6 degree offset from true north. Why that specific number? Some wild theories suggest the city isn't just a place to live, but a massive ground-level map of the solar system. If you look at the distance between the Temple of the Feathered Serpent, the Pyramid of the Sun, and the Pyramid of the Moon, they almost perfectly match the orbital distances of the planets. It sounds crazy, but the measurements are right there. This is a key detail. How could people without telescopes or advanced math know the layout of the stars? Some researchers believe they weren't just farmers, but master astronomers who viewed their city as a giant machine designed to harness the energy of the cosmos. Then there is the mica. This is one of the weirdest parts of the whole city. Archaeologists found massive sheets of mica, some over 90, 23 centimeters thick, buried underneath the floors of several temples. This isn't just any mica, though. Chemical testing shows it was transported over 2,000 miles, 3,200 kilometers, from Brazil. Why go to all that trouble just to hide a mineral under a floor? In modern times, we use mica as a thermal and electrical insulator in things like nuclear reactors and space shuttles. Some of the more out there theories suggest that Teotihuacan was actually a massive power plant.
So is it possible that this mica chamber contained some type of an energy-producing device?
They point to the liquid mercury found in tunnels underneath the pyramids as another clue. Mercury is a highly conductive metal, and finding it in large pools suggests it had a technical purpose. Could the city have been built to generate some kind of energy that we don't even understand yet? It's not that simple, though, because we don't find any wires or batteries, but the presence of rare industrial-grade minerals makes you wonder if we are missing a huge piece of the puzzle. Nobody expected this to happen, but some people even suggest that the city was a hub for visitors from other worlds. While the DNA says the people living there were local, it doesn't explain the advanced technology they supposedly used. There are rumors of massive subterranean chambers that haven't been opened yet, filled with artifacts that don't fit the time period. Some believe the Teotihuacanos were being guided by an advanced intelligence that gave them the blueprints for the pyramids. Think about the Pyramid of the Sun. It has almost the exact same base perimeter as the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. Two civilizations, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, building the exact same massive structures. Is it just a coincidence, or is there a universal blueprint for power that both groups discovered? The crazy part is that the Teotihuacanos didn't use the wheel for transport, yet they moved stones weighing 9 tons over long distances. The social structure of the city is another huge mystery that feeds into these wild theories. Usually, ancient empires are all about the king. You see giant statues of a guy with a crown and a list of all the people he beat in war. But in Teotihuacan, there is none of that. We haven't found a single tomb of a ruler. It is like the city was run by a faceless council or a group of priests. Some people think this was the first true communist utopia, where everyone lived in equal apartment blocks and shared the corn. But others think the rulers weren't human at all. They point to the strange, elongated skulls found in some burials as evidence of a different species living among the humans. While most scientists say this was just a cultural practice of head binding, the theory persists that a separate class of beings was calling the shots from the shadows. So here's the deal. When the city burned, it wasn't just a fire. It was a total erasure. It's like the people wanted to scrub every trace of their leaders from the earth. If those leaders were just humans, why be so thorough? Why smash the statues into tiny pieces and burn the lime plaster off the walls? Maybe they realized that the miracle they were promised was actually a trap. The city required more and more sacrifice to keep the gods happy. We found hundreds of skeletons of people who were offered to the pyramids. As the environment collapsed and the corn failed, the people probably realized that the blood wasn't working. They turned on the system and walked away, choosing to live in smaller groups where they weren't slaves to a giant stone machine. What most people don't realize is that the city might still be hiding its biggest secrets. There are tunnels underneath the Pyramid of the Moon that have only been mapped with ground-penetrating radar. They show a complex labyrinth of rooms and passages that have been sealed for over 1,500 years. Some think these rooms hold the actual history of the city, written in a language we haven't seen yet. Others think it's where the technology that built the city is hidden away. Hands down, the most exciting part of archaeology today is that we are finally getting the tools to see through the stone. We are using lasers to map the jungle and DNA to map the blood. But every answer just brings 10 more questions. Basically, Teotihuacan is a place that challenges everything we think we know about human history. It was a city that appeared out of nowhere, grew to a massive scale, and then lost everything. It was a city of light and color that ended in smoke and shadow. The fact that the people stayed local for so long and then just moved on shows a level of resilience that we should admire. They didn't go extinct, they just changed their way of life. They stopped being citizens of a massive empire and started being members of a community again. Maybe that is the real lesson. We think that bigger is always better, but for the Teotihuacanos, the big city eventually became a cage. Could our modern cities survive the same pressures that brought down the birthplace of the gods? Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. Tell us what you think below. Final farewell.